My name is Hannah, and I am a certified trauma-informed yoga teacher, and this is a restorative trauma-informed yoga class. What you can expect out of this class is a deep, nourishing rest that invites our nervous systems into a different state of being, also known as our rest and digest or our parasympathetic nervous system, which is really important when we are in the process of healing from trauma. So I invite you to join me in this class, and it would be helpful to have a bolster, a couple blankets, a couple blocks, anything that you might need to sink into this time of rest. So with that being said, I welcome you to find your way into a child's pose. I do have a blanket spread out on my mat, and you don't have to have this. I have this for cushion and support because I like it, so that's an option. And we're not gonna start with a lot of props just yet, but have those close by. And if you'd like to join me in a child's pose, you might start by coming into a tabletop shape. And then your knees might go a little bit wider than hip distance, maybe even as wide as your mat, depending on how much space your body is asking for today. And then your big toes can touch back behind you as we send our hips back toward our heels. Option one is to walk your hands out. Maybe you release your forehead to the floor, or maybe you turn your head to one side. If it doesn't feel safe to keep your gaze down, you don't have to. A second option is to draw your elbows back, kind of propping yourself up, and you could keep your gaze open. Perhaps resting your gaze on the floor in between your hands. And if you would like an additional sense of protection or being covered, you might even take a blanket or whatever you have and simply drape it over your back body, covering your hips. So you choose. Everything in this class is your choice. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, ever. I honor and respect whatever you choose to do with your body in this practice, which means that everything I offer in this class is a suggestion, and you always reserve the right to say no. So as you begin to settle in to whatever version of child's pose calls to you, or if child's pose is not something that your body is open to today, you might simply just take any seated shape. And we'll begin to arrive with just a few easy breaths, whatever feels natural to you. Starting to shift our awareness from the outside world, bringing it inward. It might be helpful to notice what your body is touching, what's supporting you. So you might feel if there's a blanket underneath you or a yoga mat. Noticing where that touches your skin. I find that it's really helpful to add just a little bit of movement at the beginning before we dive into longer holds and deeper shapes. And I invite you to join me in this fluid movement through our spine, similar to a cat-cow. And I'll give you a couple options here. So taking one or two more breaths here in our child's pose. with your next inhale. Option to lift your head. Start to walk your hands back, taking your time. There's no rush. You could leave the blanket draped over your hips, or you could move it to the side if you feel like it's going to be in the way. And I'll meet you in a tabletop shape again. So your knees could find their way somewhere underneath your hips, your hands somewhere underneath your shoulders. If your shoulders are feeling really tight, it might be helpful to take your stance a little bit wider. If your wrists are feeling very tender, it might be helpful to take your hands a little bit forward of your shoulders. This just creates a bit more space. So option one is to take some fluid movement. And this means any movement that feels welcome to your body. You could begin to sway your ribs from left to right. You could begin to explore curling your spine up towards the sky, or maybe draping it down towards the earth. You could continue to explore this fluid movement here in whatever way your body wants to explore it, and this is option one. Option two is to take an inhale here, and then as you exhale from tabletop, you can kind of keep your body in the same position, but just send your hips back. It's kind of like a child's pose, but not quite, because we're keeping our feet where they're at. So breathing in, and then as you exhale, you might begin to rock forward and curl your spine up towards the sky. And then inhale, allowing your tailbone to start to change directions, peeling up towards the sky and rocking back. Send your spine forward. So this is option two, kind of like a wave-like motion. Inhale, curling forward. Exhale, opening up the heart space, sending the hips back. If this wave-like motion is just not something that you want to do, that's okay. You could just take a cat-cow. Inhale, allow the spine, the stomach to drape towards the earth. Exhale, round the spine up towards the ceiling. You might even add a slight tuck to your tailbone, to your chin, drawing them in toward one another. So 3 options, and you reserve the right to choose. Option 1, fluid movement. Option 2, wave-like movement. Option 3, cat-cow. And I invite you to be here in whatever you choose for the next 3 to 4 rounds of breath. And it might be that you decide to explore one option, and then change your mind and explore a different option. There's no right or wrong. One to 2 more breaths here. And if you are ready to find completion, you might begin to sit back on your heels for just a moment. We won't be here very long. Just take a pause. Perhaps watching your body. Feel this internal movement on the inside start to settle. Noticing how your body feels. And then when you decide you're ready for the next shape, I invite you to take your blocks and your bolster, and we will set up for a supported child's pose. So taking your blocks and setting them into a T, You can set your blocks at varying heights. I'm going to start at the lowest for me, but if you need more height, the highest could look like this, where you have highest one farthest away, shorter one closer to you. So deciding what that looks like for you, and then taking your bolster and draping it over your blocks. So here's the first setup. If you have bolsters and blocks, then this might be where you're at. And you might settle your knees just on the edge of the bolsters on the inside of your knees, and beginning to drape yourself forward, perhaps placing the blanket back behind you and resting on the bolster. If you do not have a bolster or blocks, another option is to take a couple folded blankets and place them right in front of you. And then same kind of positioning towards the inside of the knees, inside of the thighs, and then draping yourself over the blankets and resting here. So depending on your setup, depending on what your body is calling for, can you give yourself permission to kind of wiggle and move and shift into what feels best and most supportive for you? So take some time to settle in. And then once you feel settled, you might start to scan through your body. And just notice whatever you notice. It's so often when we find stillness, when we begin to invite our body into rest, that our nervous system actually feels activated. Sometimes rest could be triggering, and so if that's something that's occurring for you right now, just know that it's normal. It's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. And in fact, there is no right or wrong here. If it's helpful, I invite you to bring your awareness to your breath, as we will be here in this shape for the next 15 to 18 breaths. So that means 15 to 18 inhales and 15 to 18 exhales. And if you have a bolster beneath you or blankets beneath you, as you watch your breath move in and out, you might notice how your body just gently meets or presses into that support beneath you. So can you tune into that feedback, knowing that even when our bodies are still and unmoving, they aren't actually completely still because our breath continues to move. And I'd like to read for you a passage by Octavia Raheem. And she writes, "You may think you are not doing very much at all of this shifting from the inside out, all of this adjusting and readjusting to what is. All of this releasing and letting go requires energy. Transformation requires rest. So if it feels like you're not doing enough right now, I want to point out that you are doing so much. This transformation that you are in, that you are going through, requires rest. And by resting, you are supporting your nervous system in healing from trauma. You are supporting your nervous system move out of a stuck state and into homeostasis, into a fluid state. So it might look like we're not doing much, but in reality, inside, there's so much happening. We'll take another 3 rounds of breath here in this shape. Last one. If this shape is still serving you and it feels like you're not ready to move out of it, you don't have to. You can stay here as long as you want. And if you decide that you are ready to move out of it, I invite you to take your time slowly pressing away from the floor, away from your bolster, finding your way up. Taking a pause at the top. If it feels like your legs would appreciate a little stretch, I invite you to plant your hands and allow one leg to stretch out behind you. Maybe rocking forward and back, and maybe even rolling through your ankle. Switching out your legs whenever you decide to. And then, if you'd like to meet me in our next shape, your bolster and block can stay as is, and I'll start on my left side so that I can face you. But I'm going to bring my left hip toward my bolster, and my legs are kind of not like in a 90-90 position, but sort of. So my legs are bent to the right, and then starting here, I'm bringing some awareness to your spine. It could be helpful to start with a nice, tall, spacious spine because we'll be twisting toward our bolster. So with your next breath in, option 2, float your spine up toward the ceiling. And then as you exhale, start to twist toward your bolster, maybe planting your hands on it or on the floor on either side. And then draping your body over your bolster and allowing your head to turn to one side. Finding a supported twist here. And starting to settle in. And really taking the time to adjust. Taking the time to make sure that you really feel supported here. If you need to change the height of your blocks, if you need to change the position of your legs, do you want a blanket to cover you? What do you need here that will support your rest? And we'll be here for the next 18 or so rounds of breath. I invite you to scan through your body and noticing, is there any area of your body, any muscle that is engaged that could be invited to let go? Is it your hands? Is it your shoulders? Is it the muscles around your ribs? Or your hips or your legs? Maybe it's your jaw or your facial expression. If it feels safe, I invite you to start to release your muscles, knowing that what is beneath you, your props, will support you. They will catch your weight. It's so often that we think that we have to strive and accomplish and work harder in order to heal ourselves. But sometimes the most transformative healing happens when we do less. It happens when we slow down, get quiet. We'll take another 5 rounds of breath here. And just know that at any point you want to leave a pose sooner or stay longer, you absolutely can. This is your practice. You can move at your own pace, even if that's different than what I'm doing. Last breath here. When you're ready, you might begin to slowly press yourself up. Taking a pause when you get to the top. We don't have to rush on to the next side. We can sit in this in-between moment. If you're ready for the next side, you might simply just turn to face the other way. Bringing your right hip, or whichever side is opposite for you, to the bolster. Same thing here, starting with a little bit of spaciousness, perhaps with your inhale, floating each vertebrae of your spine up, and then exhaling and twisting toward your bolster, and then finding your way down. adjusting as you go. Allowing yourself to shift into this shape. I welcome you to explore this for 15 to 18 rounds of breath. If at any point your mind needs an anchor, if you find that your mind is leaving this present moment, you could use your breath as an anchor. And that could look like either simply counting your exhales or just allowing your mind to completely focus on how it feels when your breath moves in and when it moves out. Breathing in a way that feels natural to you. You don't have to force it to be different. You can just breathe easy. Another 5 rounds of breath here. Last one. And slowly making your way up in your own timing. Taking a pause. And for our next shape, I invite you to take a supported fish pose. And so there's a couple different ways we can come into this. Option 1 is with a bolster. You can move your blocks out of the way. You can use your blocks for this supported fish pose, but because this is a restorative class, I do prefer something with a little bit more cushion. So option 1 is with your bolster, and if you don't have a bolster, I'll show you a second way with a blanket. So here's our first one. You could turn and face away from your bolster or blanket, and I like to have a little bit of space in between, because I find that if your lower back is pressed up against the bolster, it turns into more of a deep back bend compared to in your lower back compared to the opening in the heart space that we're actually trying to create here. So a little bit of space, maybe a hand width in between you and the bolster, and then draping your spine, draping your back over the bolster. And you could allow your hands, your arms, just rest either down at your sides or even rest over your belly, your stomach, and you might extend your legs out long, or if your lower back is feeling a little tense, it might feel supportive to plant your feet on your mat, taking them nice and wide, so as wide as your mat to the left and right, and then allowing your knees to fall inward. And this allows your hip flexors to take a little bit of a break. They don't have to do so much work when your legs are just kind of falling inward and allowing gravity to help out. So you could have your feet planted, or you could have your legs out long. And then a third option is to bring the soles of your feet together. So you choose. And if you don't have a bolster, you could take your blanket, and I just start here with the square, roll it up so that it kind of looks like a burrito, and then just drape it where you would the bolster and lay over that. It's the same thing. So once you get settled, you can really shift and kind of finagle your way into where this shape feels best. And then once you do arrive, another 15 to 18 breaths here. You may think you are not doing very much at all. All of this shifting from the inside out, all of this adjusting and readjusting to what is, all of this releasing and letting go requires energy. Transformation requires rest. You are in the process of transforming. Not only does this transformation require rest, but it also asks us to be courageous. And that is no easy thing. And so I want to acknowledge you. Acknowledge your courage in this moment for showing up. Not for me, not for anyone else, but for you. You're doing it. And it is no easy thing. So I celebrate you. Another 5 or so rounds of breath here. Last breath. If you are satisfied in this shape and you don't want to move out of it, please feel free to stay here. If you are ready to move out of this shape and move into our time of final rest, our Shavasana, I invite you to take your time and mindfully ease up and out of this shape. There are many ways to take our time of final rest, our Shavasana. And option one, in no particular order, option one is to lie on your back and maybe place a bolster or a rolled up blanket underneath your knees. If lying on your back is not something that feels safe for your body, you don't have to do it. It might feel safer to lie on your stomach or on your side, or even stay in a seated shape, maybe placing your back against your wall or a piece of furniture that can kind of support your back if you choose to sit up straight so that you are still supported and in a little bit more of a resting pose. So choosing what feels right to you, knowing that there is no wrong way to rest. If you have a bolster and you'd like to join me on your back, you might place the bolster underneath your knees. And then shifting your way down into whatever shape you choose, adjusting as you go. If you do choose to have your legs extended out and you're on your back and you find your way down into this shape and you notice that your lower back is feeling uncomfortable or that there's even like a tension or a pinching, it might help to bring your knees in toward your chest for just a moment, perhaps even wrapping your arms around the knees and rocking from side to side. This helps release the lower back. Find a little bit of spaciousness, and then you could extend your legs back out, give it another try, and see where you're at. And you might even decide to place a blanket over you. It can feel really welcome to take a folded blanket even, because it's a little bit heavier, and drape it over your abdomen. It's an option you might explore. It feels really grounding, for me at least. So once you feel like you've arrived in whatever shape you have chosen for yourself, I invite you to take a conscious breath in through your nose and out of your mouth. Taking as many of those as you want. Until you feel satisfied. Scanning through your body, noticing every area that your body touches, the floor or the prop or the wall, whatever is supporting you, noticing that you are being held here. You are being supported. And if it feels safe, you might allow your body to release into that support. Noticing your muscles start to let go a little bit more. Allowing your jaw to soften. Maybe allowing your shoulders to sink down toward the floor. We'll be here for the next 3 minutes or so. And I'll be quiet now for the rest of those 3 minutes, but just know that I'm here with you and I'll keep track of time and I'll let you know when those 3 minutes are complete. You can choose to stay in this place of rest until you feel complete. You don't have to rush away from it. You can stay here for as long as you want. And if you are ready to move out of this time of rest, you might add some small movement into your body, or maybe just start with a conscious breath in and out. If you are lying down on your back or your stomach, you might start to roll over to one side. And just pause here if you want, taking a moment to just ease out of this place. Whenever you get there, I will meet you in a seated shape of your choice. And if you'd like, you could join me for one collective breath. Option to place one hand over your heart and one over your stomach. Taking just a natural breath in and out to start. And then exhaling all of your air out. We'll breathe in together. Thank you for joining me in resting today. My hope for you is that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your bodies. Thank you.